pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now I would like to introduce our own Amir Kane performing the national anthem.
On Tuesday morning, September 11, 2001, terrorists attacked American civilians with despicable acts of war. They hijacked 4 passenger jets, crashing 2 of them into the World Trade Center's Twin Towers, and a third into the headquarters of the U.S. Department of Defense at the Pentagon. This caused great loss of life and tremendous damage. The 4th plane crashed in the Pennsylvania countryside, killing all on board, but falling well short of its intended target, apparently because of the heroic efforts of passengers on board. This tragedy, which caused the collapse of both Trade Center towers and destruction of part of the Pentagon, killed more than 250 airline passengers and thousands more on the ground.
Today we remember thousands of men, women, and children that died on September 11, 2001, and also the lives that were changed. 9/11 is a day that marks America's resilient spirit and reminds us that united we stand. We will never forget that dreadful day when our country and the lives of American generations to come were changed. The connection between Timber Creek and 9/11 will forever be in our memory because the school's grand opening was supposed to be on that day, but it was canceled. I recently read a poem called The Names by Billy Collins, and it's dedicated to the victims of September 11th and to their survivors. The poem lists names from A to Z with events that seem like memories, and it goes, in the morning, I walked out barefoot among thousands of flowers, heavy with dew like the eyes of tears. And in the middle states, in the evening, we can light the last swallows. The poem helps readers to understand that in the beginning, the pain of one's loss will be heavy and difficult. However, as time passes, we will take our last swallows as the pain dwindles, but there will still always be triggers that make us remember them. This is what I want to leave you with. We must remember the victims of 9/11 for the lives they lived and the positive impact they left us. We thank those who saved the lives of many others. We will never forget.
On behalf of the Timber Creek student body, I would like to take this moment to express my gratitude to the men and women who provided their service during the tragedy of 9/11. These men and women, EMTs, firefighters, police officers, paramedics, volunteers, and other emergency workers put in their own time and efforts to help our country rise above this heartbreaking event. Their determination and endurance expedited our recovery to stand back up and to show our country's unified strength. They are truly honorable and patriotic for coming together and making a difference. Thank you so much, and let's give them a round of applause for their service.
At this time, I'd like to recognize Board of Education, represented today by Dr. Ellis and Mr. McMullen, and our central office, represented today by Dr. Repici and Mr. Patriot. Because of them, we have assemblies like this to make sure you guys are educated to what's going on in the world. So again, thank you guys for everything you do. We're now going to have a video essay so you guys can actually witness that tragic day or moments of that tragic day. And I hope it isn't overpowering for too many of you, because it is, very, kind of tells a true story. The video essay was produced by our own Jeff McCoog, and we're very excited to present this.
World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
Plane comes in, I noticed it a second before it hit the building. It looked like it was moving slowly. It lined itself up to hit the building directly.
Going back and noticing, wow, I never seen a plane flying so low. And we looked out at it, all of a sudden, boom, it really didn't seem like it wasn't even real.
at my classroom because school didn't open yet. And I got a phone call on my cell phone from my mom saying that a plane hit the World Trade Center. So we turned on the TV in the classroom, myself and my coworker, and I stayed on the phone with my mom, and she was very upset that the United States was being attacked. She was so upset that she came to Timber Creek to be with me because she didn't want to be alone in the house because she wasn't working and my dad was working. So she came up to set up my classroom to get her mind off of it, and then we heard a second plane hit. It was very traumatic for me and my mom, and flying that year, we went on a trip that was nerve-wracking as well, something I'll never forget, and it reminds me of Timber Creek and how much we need to be a family here at Timber Creek.
The day 9/11 occurred, I was in my living room, obviously watching TV when it happened, and my oldest child was 6 years old, and after watching TV for a while, I realized that I had to make a decision. Tell my 6-year-old that there are some bad people. Most of the people are good, but I realized as a father, as a parent, that I had to show them, as Tara too mentioned, that bad people in the world won't win out. 9/11 has affected me more as a parent than anything else.
On 9/11, I was here at Timber Creek High School. I was preparing my class for the first day of school, which would be the next day. I remember a lady named Miss Alaka who ran into my room and said, "You have to see this. It's on the news. An airplane crashed into the Twin Towers in New York." I thought she was crazy, but she wasn't. When I heard the news, I was in shock. We were all in shock. But when something like this happens, I think it unites us all as Americans. It reminds us that we all live in the United States, and no matter where we're from, we need to stick together as Americans.
September 11th, 2001, I was a freshman at Grove City College in Western Pennsylvania. I had breakfast, as I always did that morning, and leaving the cafeteria, there was a lobby of the cafeteria, and the television was on, and CNN or some news channel was showing. And I stopped to check the news, as I often would do, and I noticed that there was a tower burning. And I thought that was weird. Nobody was watching it, no one was really paying attention to what was going about their business. And then I sat there and watched the plane crash in the second tower. And I was standing there alone. I was kind of confused. I didn't really know what was happening. I couldn't understand why it would happen. No one on TV seemed to exactly know what was happening. Just that planes had crashed into buildings and they were burning. Shortly thereafter, I found out it was a terrorist attack. Spent the next few hours in some friends' dorm rooms watching television, trying to figure out and make sense of what was happening, and we really couldn't. We couldn't wrap our minds around it.
On September 11, 2001, I was supposed to be starting my first day as a sophomore here at Timber Creek. Instead, the night before, I found out that we had another day of summer vacation, which was exciting. On that day, I remember waking up and my mom had the news on. It was on every news channel. A plane had hit the World Trade Center. I didn't think much of it because everybody said, oh, it was an accident. The last thought was that we were being attacked. Not until I watched the second plane hit and heard my mom scream did I realize that this is serious and we were in fact under attack. It was supposed to be an exciting day. My first day at Timber Creek, a brand new school. Instead, it was one of the scariest days ever. To think that America, where we live in the suburbs and our safe little homes, was in fact being attacked.
I remember I was in college at Rutgers University, and I was living home with my parents. My mom woke me up in the morning before she left for work, and she said, wake up. put the news on, it looks like the World Trade Center in New York is on fire. And I remember thinking in my head, what the heck is she waking me up for about a building on fire? But nonetheless, I put the TV on, and as time progressed, you heard the news anchors, urgency of the situation kind of increasing, and information was coming in, and they were talking about a plane hitting the building, and I remember I woke up and I was watching, and as I was watching, one building was on fire. We've all seen the video by now 1,000 times. I saw live the other plane come in and hit the building, and not really knowing what I was seeing. I was thinking, it was hard for me to kind of fathom what was going on.
On September 11, 2001, I'll never forget where I was a junior at Rutgers campus at an 8 o'clock morning class. We had heard that there were attacks in Washington, D.C. and also in New York, and at that time the campus seemed to kind of be extremely chaotic. They started pounding on the doors, asking us to evacuate. They assumed that Philadelphia had been next, hitting all the major historical landmarks on the East Coast. So I was on Rutgers campus. My aunt was about 3 or 4 blocks down in the E-Business District, and my sister was actually working across the bridge in Philly. I just remember a momentary minute of panic where I wanted to be with both of them at the same time, considering the craziness of the event. But it was best that the administrative panel just said to get in your cars, go home. So after the gridlock of traffic, getting through about an hour, I finally got home, turned on the news, and saw all the devastation. Something else that was extremely memorable for me was the fact that we live underneath an airport pattern, and I remember it being absolutely silent. No planes, nothing taking off in the sky, nothing moving over. It was extremely, extremely eerie to me. It was the first time ever in my experience that I truly felt vulnerable as an American, and it's something that I think will stick with me for the rest of my life.
On the morning of September 11th, I was a senior in high school at Washington Township. I was in my economics class, and it was just a normal school day until an announcement came over the loudspeaker for all the teachers to turn on their televisions. At that point, we saw the first tower burning. Minutes later, we saw live the second plane hitting the tower. As an 18-year-old, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, if we were completely under attack or who it was. But looking at my teacher, I could tell that this was bad. This was really bad. This was the day before Facebook and Twitter and cell phones weren't. Not everybody had cell phones, so you couldn't really get in contact with your parents and your loved ones to see what was going on. I remember vividly as classes were being changed in the hallways. You're talking about a big high school, double the size of this, and you could hear a pin drop in the hallway. Unless you heard tears. It was really powerful just to see that.
September 11, 2001, I was in college, and I was home in the morning, and I was sleeping when the first plane hit the first tower. And I remember my mom calling up to me, yelling up the steps that they were attacking New York City, and I wake up, I'm like, what's going on? I go downstairs. And watching the news, and my first thought was it was an accident. Who would intentionally fly a plane into a building? And on the news they were speculating it was an accident. And then I remember watching the television, and I can still picture it in my head, as if it just happened an hour ago. Watching live, real time, the second plane fly into the frame of the camera and hit the building. And everybody, including the newscaster, it's not often that you have a newscaster at a loss for words. And everybody was just stunned. We just watched this happen. Nobody was expecting that to happen. And at that point, it became clear that this was intentional. And just that feeling of fear, like people were just on an airplane to go visit family, friends, business, and then this happened. That unsettled feeling is something that I'll never forget. And my sister had just started her freshman year in college in New York City, So that added a whole nother element to it where we were, afraid for her. Luckily, she was about 100 blocks uptown, and her campus went into lockdown, so she was safe, or we hoped and presumed that she was.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. McCoog and faculty members for the powerful video. Thank you, Mayor, Chief Earle, Dr. Repici, Mr. Cappuccio, Board of Education members, Dr. Ellis and Mr. McMullen, the Marine Corps Color Guard, the VFW, representatives from the fire, emergency medical, and police departments, representatives from the Army, Mr. Saunders, Mr. McCoog, history teacher, Mrs. Griffin, and Timber Creek's History Club, Mrs. Forsythe and Mrs. Rahman, and our maintenance crew for making this 9/11 reflection ceremony possible and poignant. On that fateful day, 13 years ago, I was a vice principal along with other administrators, maintenance, and secretarial staff working hard to prepare Timber Creek for its grand opening on September 12th. While running around the building getting things ready, it wasn't until lunchtime that I heard the tragic news. Everyone was in a state of shock, confusion, and disbelief that someone would ever plan such a heinous act. The timing of this event forever intertwines Timber Creek with the events of 9/11. We did not know what to expect or how many Timber Creek families might be affected by the loss of a loved one. We were very lucky for that at that time all Timber Creek's family members were fine. The World Trade Center Twin Towers were the symbol of American ingenuity, strength, labor, imagination, commerce, and ingenuity. The terrorists thought that such a devastating loss would defeat America. In the face of this horrific tragedy, Americans found their spirit, worked together 24/7 for months after the tragedy, and were resilient. Life in America has changed. We have traded a measure of freedom for security, and we are much more secure today than we were pre-9/11. People were used to coming in and going out of our school at any door. Parents would come in through unlocked doors and go directly to vice principal offices. If you were dropping or picking someone up at the airport, you could go directly to the gates to meet a family member. You did not have to take your shoes and jackets off, excuse me, put your belongings in a bin, walk through a metal detector, and there was no such thing as pat-downs or x-rays at the airport. No one worried about an abandoned book bag or a package. We now practice monthly security drills, lock all of our doors, and require visitors to sign in at the front desk. No one is permitted to walk through the building without an escort. On 9/11, we lost the Twin Towers, endured an attack on the Pentagon, and lost another jetliner in Pennsylvania. What the terrorists didn't realize is with the Twin Towers down, the view from the south of Manhattan is the Statue of Liberty. And now we will hear from Dr. Repici. Thank you.
Good morning. For most of you in this room, September 11, 2001 is a day that is somewhat removed from your conscience. After all, some of the students in here were no more than 5 years old. Some of you even maybe just 1 year old at the time. So I understand it's difficult for some of you to imagine the horror that we witnessed. Difficult for you to comprehend the devastation and the loss. History provides us a window into another context, into another time, into another valley of memories that for this event, for most of the students here, do not share. Yet most of the adults in this room, along with most Americans, especially your parents, question what the future will hold for American children and what will America play on a drastically unfamiliar global stage. Some events pass us and memories fade. However, for many of us, the opening of Timber Creek High School will forever be linked with the memories of September 11th. So on this Patriot Day, and every subsequent Patriot Day that you live, please remember that the lives that were lost. Please remember those that so bravely answered the emergency calls to attend to the horrors of that day. And remember those that still, even 13 years later, are battling for their life due to the environmental exposures suffered as a result of being a first responder. And so it is important for the students to place this event into meaning. How can I honor the lives lost? How should I act so that I can repay the debts of those that have sacrificed so much so that we shall live so comfortably? Only you can answer those questions. But like most educators, I'm going to suggest some advice. You can honor those that lost their lives that day by thanking the servicemen and women who served this country with honor. If you see a serviceman or woman, take the time to say, thank you for your service. Remember the soldiers of past wars who so honorably served during peace times and at war. It makes a difference to thank a veteran. You can honor the first responders by taking the time to thank the courageous men and women of the local police, fire, and rescue services, some of whom were seated here today. Thank them for putting on the uniform, taking an oath to not only uphold the law, but to put their own lives at risk for the benefit of social order, maintaining peace, and caring for our neighbors. And most important, you are duty-bound as Americans to never forget those who came before you, who have sacrificed with blood, sweat, and tears to provide the foundation upon which you place your lives. Be reflective. Be reflective about those that lost and suffered on September 11th, yet be thankful for the courage and bravery exhibited by those in uniform every single day. For this is Patriot Day, a day to celebrate the American resolve that is unique, yet not to be taken for granted. I thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Mayor of Bluffton Township, David Mayer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Repici. Good morning, Mrs. Robinson, and the faculty and staff here at Timber Creek High School, and to the student body. It is great to be with you this morning, especially on a day like today, because of the strong and deep connection that Timber Creek High School has for the events of September the 11th. Today we gather to remember those innocent Americans, the service men and women, and the members of our firefighting, police, and EMS communities that lost their lives 13 years ago today. 13 years ago today, at this very moment, our nation faced an unprovoked and unparalleled attack that left our nation very uncertain and struck at the heart of our nation, but made our soul much stronger. 13 years ago, I was working in Camden County for the county government, working in Camden City Hall. And we received a call in our office a little bit before 9 o'clock a.m. that said a small plane hit one of the towers in New York City. And so I walked across the hall, knowing that there was a TV in an office over there. And of course, the stations were starting to go live at that time. And I saw the building, and others were starting to gather. And I saw the building on fire. And I thought to myself, that cannot be a small plane. At that time, no one really knew what was happening or what was going on. As we were watching this go down live, I can vividly remember the second plane coming from the left. I can remember it coming from the left and striking the second tower. When that happened, there were about 20 people in that room, and there was just gasps of unbelievable sadness and shock. We left there and, of course, decided to close the county down for that day because it was so important that families would reunite and connect. And I got home, and my children are the same ages as few. My son at that time was 5, my daughter was 2. And we got home, and of course the TV's on, and we're glued to the television to try to figure out what's happening. And children are very perceptive. And I can remember my son coming up to me, and he said, "Daddy, why would a pilot fly a plane into a building?" And I realized then the innocence of our children and the fact that we would now have to explain to them the reality of a very cruel world. About 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to join the Shoes Landing Fire Company and our Gloucester Township Police Department as we traveled to New York City, to JFK Airport, to retrieve a beam from one of the World Trade Centers that we now have on display in front of the Shoes Landing Fire Company. We walked into this very, very large airport hangar, really 2 airport hangars, and all the debris from September 11th was kind of organized in different panels or different areas. And I mean all the debris. There were beams, there were fire trucks, there were buses, there were trains. There were personal artifacts. There were slippers from the aircraft. There were signs from businesses underneath the World Trade Center. All of that tied together into one of the most horrific days in our nation's history. Once again, as our president announced last night, America will lead the way and lead the world in the fight against terrorism. Once again, our servicemen and women will complete a mission to destroy another set of the terrorist group. We stand together and we stand strong so that this generation and future generations of Americans do not have to witness what happened 13 years ago today. I thank you for the opportunity to be with you this morning, and it is now my honor to introduce the Chief of Police in Gloucester Township, Chief Harry Earle, who is really one of the most innovative law enforcement professionals I've had the opportunity to meet with all the community policing that we're doing here in Gloucester Township. So with that, Chief Harry Earle.
Well, good morning, and certainly a special thank you to Mayor and Dr. Repici, the Board of Education, Mrs. Robinson, and Mr. Saunders. And of course, the Timber Creek, all the students and staff here for really making, what really is a celebration of a very tragic event. And as I speak to you today as the Chief of Police of Gloucester Township, there's just really 2 words that I hope I leave you with. And that is preparedness and respect. And I talk about preparedness because on September 11, 2001, I was a police officer. I've been here for nearly 26 years. But on that day, I was what's called the watch commander. I was a lieutenant, and I ran the operations of the department for that particular day, which was just, unfortunately, a pretty significant day. But how I learned about probably the worst thing that could happen to the United States was I was in a meeting with the 2 sergeants that run various parts of Gloucester County. And we were at the diner. We were at Meadows Diner. And someone said, "Oh, did you hear what happened?" So we walk out and we see on the television that a plane hit the World Trade Center. That's how law enforcement learned of such a terrible incident. So you would think, and I'm giving you, when I talk about preparedness, remember that you would think, oh, I will tune into some federal agency and get all this information about what's going on. But see, back in 2001, that didn't exist. I couldn't even go to the police department to watch it on TV because that didn't exist. There was a TV there, but it barely worked because it had, believe it or not, an antenna just 13 years ago. It kind of buzzed in and out. So I had to go home. So I drive to my home, and I come through the door, and there's my wife with my first child, 3 months old, standing in front of the TV, in shock, just as I heard a great description by the teachers today. So I realized now the magnitude of what's occurring before me, and the radio is silent. During a snowstorm in Gloucester Township, when you start getting to be about a foot, the radio goes silent, believe it or not. Everyone stays home, it's quite peaceful for the most part. That was that day. There was nothing happening. So I realized this and we need to do something. But what was that something? You know, local law enforcement here, no one knew what to do. So I'll call the station and see what's going on there. Well, the phone doesn't work. The house phone I can't get through. And I did have a cell phone at the time. That certainly did not work. So now I drive to the station to see what's going to happen. Because now I have to deal with police officers that have family members working, let's say, in Philadelphia who are scared, and they can't reach them. So there's a whole human dynamic now and sacrifice that we don't always think about of our first responders when they're in a situation where they can't leave. And then we get the word of we need to lock down the building that came from our county prosecutor's office. And I heard Mrs. Robinson describe too about how we practice today security of our schools. And we get the word to lock down the police department. Well, what does that mean? We never heard that before, just 13 years ago. So that day, I realized at that moment, it changed my career. It changed the profession of law enforcement and all first responders. From that point forward, everything we do started to begin about preparedness. Now we do everything. If there's a suspicious package in North Jersey, I get an alert on my phone. CNN is playing all around the police department because we need to know what's happening, because we want to protect you. But that protection doesn't stop with our first responders, our firefighters, EMS, and of course, police that are here today. It does start with you. And the word vigilance also became a very popular word since 2001, and that is so true. That you are a very big part of keeping the Gloucester Township community safe. Mrs. Mayor mentioned we do a lot of programs. One of those programs are information. We push out a lot of information. Whether that traces back to the day of 2001 when no information was coming out to the communities, I don't know. But it's certainly something that we did change and we wanted to change. And when I talk about respect, sadly, I think that day changed the way people do first responders. 343 firefighters and 60 police officers lost their lives that day. And I hope that you always respect that. And also just think that, unfortunately, that hasn't stopped. 2 police officers were killed in this country just this past weekend. So we need to remember that. Certainly, there's some great explanation today about paying respect to the first responders and service members for everything they do every day. Because unfortunately, as President Obama did say last night, that is not going to stop. We must continue. We must continue our preparedness, our vigilance, and please continue that respect. Thank you again for honoring us.
Chief Earle, on behalf of Timber Creek, I would like to present you with this award for, well, as a thanks and recognition for your service to our community and your dedication to the safety and well-being of Gloucester Township. At this time, select Timber Creek choir members are going to perform America the Beautiful. recognize those on the faculty and staff of Timber Creek High School that have given their lives to the service and protection of our country. So if I call your name, please come up to the stage. Corporal Jose Melendez is a Slack Sergeant in the Air Force and served under the Desert Storm. If you could please come up to the front. Robert Henson, Master Sergeant, currently serves in the Delaware. Chuck Renner served in the Air Force. Chuck Renner, if you're here, please come up. Richard Bowles also served in the U.S. Navy from 1987 to 1991. And we would also like to recognize some more staff that are currently serving in our community as EMTs. So Alexis Rabeau, Kristen Savage, also nurse, and Laura Dye. We also want to recognize any students who have family in the armed forces or any type of, in the police department, fire department, EMTs, VFW. If you could please stand up if you have any relatives in there. We would also like to recognize the Gloucester Township Police Department for your service. To recognize the Gloucester Township Fire Department. And the many EMTs that are currently serving our community. We would like to send a special thank you to those who are serving or have currently or have served in the armed forces and or VFW. So if you could please stand up. On behalf of Timber Creek, we'd like to thank you all for your service to our country and making every single day a great day for us. Thank you. And now we have Ms. Mariana to bring up those reports.
Thank you to our Timber Creek Chorus for that beautiful rendition. Also, thank you for joining us in commemorating our servicemen and women who continue to risk their lives daily to preserve our freedom. We acknowledge the police, rescue workers, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, and volunteers who risked their lives that fateful day to help the injured. Today, we also pay homage to the men, women, and children who lost their lives on September 11, 2001. On that day, we vowed that we would never forget them. Please rise and remain standing as we reflect on Patriots' Day. Followed by taps, and we ask that you remain standing as the Marine Corps retires the colors. I want to thank all of you for being such a wonderful student body and for being a part of this program. At this time, I ask the dignitaries to please remain in your seats as the students exit after the closing ceremonies for fourth period class. Again, please remain standing for taps and retiring the colors. Thank you.
Retired colors.